When we look at works of art, we subconsciously relate to it through things that we've seen, heard, or experienced before. Art is rarely created in a vacuum-like atmosphere. Artists constantly reference the past, building on trusted classics, critiquing outdated models, rediscovering lost stories, or utilizing conventional methods and techniques to conceive new ideas.
The work of contemporary artists is a lively ensemble of materials, methods, concepts, and subjects that defies traditional boundaries and, as a result, is very tough to define. Diverse and liberal, contemporary art is set apart by the very lack of a uniform organizing principle. Artists today explore ideas, questions, and practices that study the past, describe the present, and imagine the future.
The contemporary movement began in the 1970s and continues to all forms of present-day art. What differentiates artwork from this movement is in the discipline of representational art, where the goal is to portray an object as real and not desirable to the point of unattainable.
The style is interesting in the notion that it's created to be natural, yet highly objective. However, many artists have incorporated the older Greek movement of classical realism into their modern-day work. Contemporary realist artists have a certain fondness of expressing the little things in life, the objects that rest in the unconscious part of our existence, but that come together like pieces of a puzzle to make up a bigger picture. For example, the small, intricate flowers in a corner of your backyard that for you require nothing more than a glance, but to the bees living in your garden is their whole world.
Contemporary artists tend to find their pieces to be at either ends of the two extremes. A painting designed simply for aesthetic appeal, or a painting designed to make you think and realize the taboo situations of reality, to say what society deems to be unsayable.
Prior to contemporary art were the modernism and postmodernism movements. Modernism, in the arts, is a bold jump from the past and continues to introduce new forms of expression. Modernism is home to the late 19th to the mid-20th century, also known as post-World War I.
Modernism is influenced by industrialization, social evolution, and changes in science and social sciences. It was also influenced by the mistrust and doubt of authority. It was thought to be incompatible with Victorian morality, optimism, and convention, which introduced new ideas and new forms of expression. In the late 20th century, postmodern art manifested itself to be contradictory to the aspects of modernism. Movements which include intermediate, installation art, conceptual, and multimedia categorized as postmodern.
Postmodernism is often associated with deconstruction and post-structuralism, as it gained popularity alongside post-structural thought. Postmodernism is a blatant rejection of its predecessor, modernism. In its prime, postmodernism had a great influence on 5 major fields: architecture, urban planning, literature, music, and graphic design. Postmodernism was all about the defiance of rebels and going against the system. John Watkins Chapman suggested a postmodern style of painting as a way to depart from French Impressionism, while J.M. Thompson once described postmodernism as a change in attitude and belief in respect to the criticism of religion. The reason of postmodernism is to escape from the double-mindedness of modernism by being thorough in its criticism, by extending it to religion as well as theology, to Catholic feeling as well as to Catholic tradition. Arnold J. Toynbee believed that the postmodern age was inaugurated by the devastating effects of the First World War. Postmodernist ideas in philosophy emphasize the significance of critical theory and has been prominent in the interpretation of history, law, and culture in the late 20th century. Contemporary art speaks to the dramatic, social, political, and technological changes of the last 50 years, and it questions many society's values and assumptions. Art of this era has become more diverse and cannot be easily defined through a list of visual characteristics, artistic themes, or cultural concerns. Minimalism and pop art paved the way for later artists to explore questions about the conceptual nature of art, its form, its production, and its ability to communicate in different ways.
Human beings are never happy without change. It is difficult for one to have the same surroundings for an entire lifetime. Throughout the ages, mankind has changed their views on art, therefore causing an alteration around the attraction to certain pieces. Art has been a continuously growing element of life, only staying long enough for one to cherish it, and then deviating from their prior attraction to said piece. Since the beginning, art has developed from Impressionism and Cubism, to Modernism, to Contemporary. We are here to view these advances in art.
Impressionism began in the 19th century, only to develop to its full potential in the 1870s and 1880s, thanks in large to Paris-based painters. Impressionist painting characteristics include relatively small, thin, yet visible brushstrokes, open composition, emphasis on accurate depiction of light in its changing qualities, ordinary subject matter, inclusion of movement as a crucial element of human perception and experience, and unusual visual angles.
Cubism, which followed Impressionism, was a type of artwork that completely strayed from the beaten path. The Cubist painters rejected the inherent concept that art should copy nature, or that they should adopt the traditional techniques of perspective, modeling, and foreshortening. They wanted instead to emphasize the two-dimensionality of the canvas, so they reduced and fractured objects into geometric forms and then realigned these within a shallow relief-like space. As a result of Cubism, Modernism was conceived. Challenging the notion that art must realistically depict the world, some artists experimented with the expressive use of color, non-traditional materials, and new techniques and mediums. It was an art form that took a completely different look at reality.
Finally, we arrive at contemporary art. Today's artists work in and respond to a global environment that is culturally diverse, technologically advancing, and multifaceted. Contemporary art is often argued by specialists on whether it began in our lifetime or after the Second World War. With the beginning of modern art, people have begun to take into account whether a work of art is interesting, thought-provoking, and/or challenging as well. Since the early 20th century, some artists have turned away from realistic representation and the depiction of the human figure and have moved increasingly towards meaningful abstraction. Third millennium art has brought us to several very unique categories of paintings: statues and live action art. Contemporary art itself divides into a variety of similar crafts, including kitsch, contemporary realism, photorealism, and poster art realism. Let us explain each category in further depth.
Until the 1970s, kitsch was almost exclusively studied in German. A man named Hermann Broch argues that the essence of kitsch is imitation. Kitsch mimics its immediate predecessor with no regards to ethics. It aims to copy the beautiful, not the good. The actual definition of kitsch, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is things such as movies or works of art that are of low quality and that many people find amusing and enjoyable. Kitsch is not meant to be an art form that is taken seriously, but made for the enjoyment of the viewer and reader of the piece. Artists include Jeff Koons, Robert Ferry, and Helen Knoop. Kitsch is art with aesthetics that favor what later art critics would consider to be exaggerated sentimentality and melodrama, because of its humorous and ironic nature.
Contemporary realism is a shared method by artists to enjoy realism as well as abstract art. Such artists include Philip Pearlstein, Dina Brodsky, Ellen Eagle, Ken Danby, and Sarah Webb. Its name, contemporary realism, is exactly what it is portrayed as. It is a representational art, where the object is to portray the real and not the ideal. Photorealism is an art form that closely mirrors reality. Photorealism is a genre of art that encompasses painting, drawing, and other graphic media, in which an artist studies a photograph and then attempts to reproduce the image as realistically as possible in another medium. Since the artist often used photographs or cameras for the sake of the recreation process, photorealism is considered an acceptance of modernism.
Contemporary artists may question traditional ideas of how art is defined, what constitutes art, and how art is made, while creating dialogue with, and in some cases rejecting, the styles and movements that came before them. The constantly developing art that we surround ourselves with have changed in immense ways. These ways include the canvas, the paint used, the meaning behind the painting, the methods, and the technique in use. Contemporary and modern art can simply be described as groundbreaking, an altogether groundbreaking movement influenced by the most talented of artists. Now, we'll show you some examples that encompass the idea of contemporary art.
This is Jeff Koons' Balloon Dog series in magenta, made in mirror polished stainless steel with transparent color coating. This sculpture, created by Jeff Koons in the late 90s, is the ideal example of contemporary sculpture in kitsch. Koons is a revolutionist in the contemporary world of artists. His work is the perfect example of the unusual aesthetic of contemporary sculpture. Koons created the illusion of a balloon animal using steel and polish. His inflatable pieces stem from the symbol of optimism and future. The balloon dog is eternally optimistic, while simultaneously creating a dialogue between its interior and exterior surroundings through its reflective surfaces. This is a key idea in contemporary art, using aesthetics to reveal messages about reality. We especially enjoy the contradiction between the light, airy balloon dog in real life versus its large-scale and heavy sculptural copy.
This piece is by Alex Colville, called To Prince Edward Island, 1965, in acrylic emulsion on Masonite. We chose this piece to represent the technical and diagrammatic parts of the contemporary art period. Alex Colville is the ideal example of a contemporary artist. His pieces represent contemporary art because of their modern techniques, contemporary subjects, and meanings. Colville's work is completed by painting many layers upon layers on wooden boards. This painstaking technique takes him months. Colville's compositions are static, constantly telling a story in a brief, concise plot. His methods create images that depict elusive tension, capturing moments on the edge of change or the unknown.
Andreas Englund, Aging Superheroes, Collection Number 5, Oil on Canvas. Andreas Englund's works are also a representation of kitsch in the current field. His work screams bizarre, yet has a humorous twist that sends a thought-provoking message. Not only is the painting itself amazing, his pieces capture a fresh take on art.
This is Ralph Goings' Cream Pie, 1979, in lithograph. Ralph Goings is a famous photorealist artist. His work is widely recognized because of the intense illusion of real life. His work holds pertinence to the contemporary movement because it is unlike any pieces in the past. Photorealism doesn't have the message like many other pieces in the relating period. Many photorealistic works are of subjects that hold zero importance at all. Photorealism is mainly for the purpose of aesthetics and creating illusions. Goings also used contemporary mediums like lithograph to create these pieces.
This is Earthling by Janet Werner, oil on canvas. Janet's painting is an example of contemporary art because of the techniques and ideas behind it. Werner is an example of a common contemporary artist who uses the thick strokes and isolated colors to paint pieces. This painting is the ideal example of Impressionism, although this resembles a woman. The textures and colors hold unrealistic qualities.
This piece is by Carol Wainio, Pour retrouver le chemin. Carol Wainio's painting is impressionistic and contemporary realistic. She creates a place where the past and present may meet. Wainio uses controversy throughout her painting, which is why it embodies the contemporary art movement. Her techniques vary between realism, impressionism, and abstract. She also uses ideas and symbols to add to her message. Her work embodies contemporary art and the bizarre yet profound delivery.
This is Whispering Sisters by Rose Frameth Fraser, oil on linen. When I first came across this piece by Rose Frameth Fraser, named Whispering Sisters, my instant reaction to this artwork was the negative energy surrounding it. It has a certain still and solemn air about it that is portrayed through the darkness and the choice of color represented by the artist. The shading of the painting makes us look towards the center, where we see the two sisters gossiping and whispering. When looking at the image, you immediately recognize a very dark and brooding background. Your eyes slowly move towards the two detailed blue vases that sit behind an orange couch, where soft, creamy-looking fur blanket sits atop it. You are then drawn towards the two sisters who are seated on the couch. One woman has a lace dress and wears one elegant cream-colored glove on her right arm, which is brought up towards her sister's ear in mid-whisper. You then look towards her left arm, which does not share the same glove, but instead is locked in her sister's right hand by handcuffs. Her sister wears a black hat with a gold-yellow rim, while her hair is in a tight updo. Her arms are bare, while the rest of her body is covered in a sleeveless black gown. Both women have dark hair, large earrings, and black shoes. The expressions on their faces are smug, as if they believe they are better than you. They appear as pompous ladies, not concerned with their current situation. One woman has a lace dress and wears one elegant cream-colored glove on her right arm, which is brought up towards her sister's ear in mid-whisper. You then look towards her left arm, which does not share the same glove, but instead is locked in her sister's right hand by handcuffs. Her sister wears a black hat with a gold-yellow rim, while her hair is in a tight updo. Her arms are bare, while the rest of her body is covered in a sleeveless black gown. Both women have dark hair, large earrings, and black shoes. The expressions on their faces are smug, as if they believe they are better than you. They appear as pompous ladies, not concerned with their current situation. You wonder if they are there by choice or if they must be there, as if they are captured. The palette that Rose has chosen is a very dull, dark one. The colors chosen, although shifted from their original being, are primary, mainly blues, yellows, and reds. The most prominent color used is black, or a very dark blue. We see little to no white or purple used in this piece. Shadowing is a very large part of this painting, with the light coming from the right side of our point of view. The left half of the sister on the right side's face is in complete shadow. The women look as if their bodies are proportional and realistic enough for a painting. The shadowing leads to a very dark contrast within the painting, and the tones are all very similar. It is an oil on linen painting with a thick enough appliance of paint. It is difficult to see the brushstrokes within the painting, leading you to believe that the paint was applied with a soft, non-synthetic brush. It looks as if the artist took her time to really detail the image, allowing us to perceive the image in our own way. The lines used are organic, allowing the creation of the woman. Soft lines are used in the painting. The edges of the painting, such as the wall and the floor, are bare and without shape. The focal point is situated on the left sister's face. There is no shadowing there, and the light is bright. When looking at this work, I believe the artist wanted us to feel judged and isolated. She has used the shadowing to make the painting feel lonely and dark, making us feel these emotions. The use of her very dark colors brings out this reaction in the viewer. I believe that the artist used the finest colors possible to create the mood. Any other use of color would have caused a different emotion. The painting we see can be interpreted in many different ways, depending on the reader of the piece. When I saw this painting, it instantly grabbed my attention because of the meaning I saw behind it. The way that the two women are cuffed together makes us think of how they are permanently locked in an eternal embrace. The way they whisper to each other intently make us think of secrets, and once you tell a personal secret to someone, you are locked together in a permanent silence of this secret. The theme that was presented to me was secrecy. If I were within the painting, a character sharing a room with the two sisters, I would feel excluded and lonely. The piece is very kitsch, presenting a hard-to-read work with multiple meanings.
Cesar Santos, Assoluta, Oil on Linen. The woman seems to take over the painting. She's clearly the focal point. She stands open-armed, leaning forward, her body slightly twisted. She gazes downward at an unknown point. Her hair is messy, which adds to her free-spirited allure. Although her expression shows she is fixated on something in the distance, her stance and appeal make her seem careless and independent. She is completely nude, yet she does not seem vulnerable or concerned. The lower half of her body is left unpainted and white, giving her an unfinished quality while adding emphasis to her upper half. The background seems fairly simple at first glance, but is actually a whole other intricate piece. In the background, we can observe two angels and a helpless man. The background has a high Renaissance nature, which disassociates it with the modern woman. The link between the two aspects of this painting is the colors. A Renaissance painting would have the warm color like the woman has, and a nude sketch would have the black and white textured look that the background has, creating a balance. I chose this piece because of its many contradictions. The modern woman and the 16th century angels, the warm colors versus the hard black and white, the soft edges of the woman's body and the angular rough lines of the background, the openness of the girl's body language opposed to the inwards facing angels that create a closed image. The artist used warm, smooth colors in the woman's body and cool grays for the background. The artist used oil and pulled linen canvas, but created a graphite on paper sketch look, which is an interesting technique seen only in contemporary art. Peace has a still, peaceful, and open quality, but is actually a paused scene filled with movement and emotion. I think the artist was trying to create a controversial piece to make you feel so many things at once. Looking at the picture, you can feel freedom, serenity, worry, sorrow, expression, breaking confinement, etc. I think the artist is trying to symbolize letting go and breaking free.
This is Alley by the Lake by Leonid Afremov. Looking at Afremov's piece, the first thing that appeals to me is the contrast of the blue water and sky and the yellow warmth of autumn provided by the street lamps. In the painting, a couple walks along what seems to be a rainy alley. It is clear that Afremov has an understanding of the concept of reflection. I know this because on the wet alleyway, there is a distorted view of the colorful scenery surrounding it. On the canvas, a delicate couple walks through the puddles arm in arm under an umbrella. Due to the bright color of the street lamp next to the dark red of the autumn leaves, my eyes are immediately drawn upward. The focal point isn't the couple, but the mood the street lamp gives the painting for the couple. The most prominent color is yellow. Since there are street lamps every meter or so, the light of each lamp lights up the red and orange leaves to a sunset yellow all the way down the alley. As mentioned before, there is a prominent usage of contrast in the painting. The most obvious example being the warm and cool colors in the night. The emphasis is clearly on the couple. The contrasting blue and yellow are separated by the alleyway where the couple is walking. The painting is clearly painted with an oil paint and palette knife. We see this through Afremov's technique, the small knife strokes on the trees and the smooth lines blended in the ground. Afremov doesn't use geometric lines to represent the trees. The only creator of the tree is nature. Afremov did an outstanding job at achieving unity. The interrelation of the weather, the colors, the mood, and the couple force a pleasing sense. Needless to say, this painting qualifies as aesthetically pleasing fine art. Despite the weather, the couple strolls through the alley peacefully, enjoying the moment. The alley perhaps becomes a consolation to this couple, whether the mood is depressing or they are experiencing changes in life. Nature gives them the power to overcome the troubles of life. The painting also says that old habits die hard, old places are like old memories. Memory is a part of consciousness that determines our life.
Peeled by Scott Fraser. When I typed into Google, Best Contemporary Realist Paintings, I thought I was in for a struggle to pick one painting that spoke to me above the rest. Not even 10 minutes into my search, I came across Peeled, an oil painting by Scott Fraser. Surrounded by the best contemporary realist paintings in the world, this artwork screamed for my attention with its stunning, aesthetically pleasing symmetry and the contrasting colors it possesses. My eye was instantly drawn to it, and I was mesmerized by the unbelievably realistic spirals of the peels. As I began looking at all the aspects of the painting, I noticed that the descending and ascending peels point downwards, and subconsciously continues to draw attention to the exact center of the painting, about halfway down the middle fruit, which serves as the focal point. The artist used a thin brush and applied the paint thinly. I believe that the artist took extra care to make sure that every single detail he painted served a purpose and served it well, which leads me to believe that the artist created this painting slowly and painstakingly. Depending on who looks at this still life painting, many different themes may rise to the surface. My interpretation is that of a tale of heartbreak, and looking at the painting from left to right, it seems to be a timeline of a failed relationship. When you begin to trust someone, you share things about yourself, and they see you for who you are on the inside. The further along your relationship progresses, the more trust you give them, and the more open you are until you reach the point where they see right through your exterior, and it becomes impossible for anyone to know you better. However, if things turn sour and your heart gets broken, you begin to shrivel up and close yourself off, much like repeeling a lemon. You become so scared to trust again because of how hurt you were that eventually you close yourself off completely, and you're right where you started, an unpeeled lemon. Now, if you'll notice, the lemons on the shelf are not the only lemons on the canvas. On the bottom portion of the painting, there are several lemons, which are at different stages of peeled and emphasize the importance of trying. These represent the failed attempts where you go up before you close yourself off. The rectangular black background represents the unknown, and in design, rectangles symbolize stability, security, and trustworthiness. Our point of view is head-on, with the lighting coming in from our left side. The texture is soft and fine, and the artists use primarily neutral colors, which allow the bright lemons to shine with that much more intensity. The artist uses unbelievable vision to blend such an extraordinary theme into such ordinary objects.
Humans will never stop evolving. For the future, we are predicting art to go even further than it is now from realism. Like we learned from the Neanderthals, humans tend to exaggerate. Over the years, art has become more emotional and expressive and has gone further and further from the traditional representation. We predict that art to the inartistic will be impossible to interpret due to the complex symbolism.
Life is ever evolving, in constant change, never a moment of complete and utter stillness. Whether this is desirable or not, society must learn to accept this fact. Those few of us who have acknowledged this actuality have become some of the greatest and most respected artists. Their art in continual fluctuation following the progression. From Impressionism to Cubism to Modernism to Contemporary, artists are forever changing, resulting in the diverse subgroups of contemporary art. We, the viewers, will eternally be grateful for the artists who change their work for our benefit.